and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Austin Maxwell of Kanga Coolers. Austin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, I am originally from Annapolis, Maryland. I'm about 10 minutes from the Naval Academy. Grew up on the water and doing a lot of outdoor activities and fishing and crabbing, and lived there for my entire up until high school, and I left for college. So I guess the
Hmm.
first 18 years of my life was in Annapolis, Maryland.
Yeah, growing up, what were some of your aspirations and interests, like athletics or entrepreneurship? What did that look like?
Yeah, sports was a big component of it. I love I like to reflect on a lot of the team building skills that were brought from that and how to interact with others and all team sports, soccer, volleyball, stuff like that. And from an entrepreneurship standpoint, my first real job was at a car wash, and it was like a
Mm,
high end car wash. And I learned a lot about how to communicate with people because there were about 150 to 200 different people coming through that car wash every single day. And it was my job
wow.
to open their door, greet them, see how they were doing, and learn a lot about sales in that
Mm,
role. And prior to that, my not so real job, but some may say I reflect on it a lot still, was my dad and I started a crab business. So crabbing is really big in Maryland, catching
mm,
live blue crabs and Old Bay and football and beer and all that good stuff.
yeah.
And so we just got a little boat and a trot line. It's just basically like a yarn, and
Mm,
you would tie chicken necks to it and let it sink to the bottom of the Magothy River. And every 3 feet there'd be a chicken neck, and so you just let it sit, and then you'd
mm,
basically take the boat forward, and it would pull up. And if there's a crab on there, you'd scoop it, you drop it in the bin, and then just go door to door and sell them live
wow.
in the form of a dozen or a bushel, which is like 4 to 5 dozen crabs to people. And I mean, I was probably 12, 13 years old, and my dad was like, hey, you cover the cost of the gas and the chicken necks, and then we split it 50-50, but you do all the door-to-door selling. And yeah, that was kind of a funny early stage into sales.
No, I love it. I'd like to get into that a little more. So I'm in the Midwest in Indiana, and like if someone came door to door with crabs, it would be very odd. Like what
That's
was the
right.
response? Like yeah, you got out there, was it pretty normal and
So
typical?
normal. That's what's crazy is even when I
Yeah.
tell people, I mean, I'm down in South Carolina now on the coast, but even when I tell people that story, they're like, that's such a weird thing. But it's like, no, I mean, like live seafood is huge up in that part of, the mid Atlantic. And that was super normal. But I'm telling you, man, you could get like $500 for a bushel of crabs if they were the right
Wow.
size. So you're saying, if you're
Yeah.
able to get 2 or 3 bushels in a morning, you've got $1,000 or $1,500 day ahead of you. And
Wow.
it's just the cold calling as a young person and trying to get over the nerves and being told no a lot. I mean, people are like, nah, dude, we just had a crab feast last night, or like, nah, I'm not into it. So
Yeah,
a lot of lessons can be reflected on from that for sure.
totally. So I saw you went on to study at Clemson in 2013. What did you study there, and overall, what was your experience like with your time?
Yeah. Yeah, I took the SAT, ACT, all that fun stuff in high school, and I scored absolutely terrible on everything that had to do with like English and reading. And my scores for like math and science were okay, I guess like above average, but nothing incredible. And all passed because of those two exams led to, hey, Austin should probably be an engineer.
Wow.
And so when I applied for Clemson, that was what I applied for and got into the engineering program. Got to about midway through sophomore year and realized that I just absolutely hate engineering.
Mm,
Everything about it. I didn't relate with my classmates. I wasn't keeping up in the classroom itself. It was very fast paced, and it just didn't feel like it was something for me. And so I go to my counselor and I'm like, hey, let's switch over to business or marketing or sales or anything else. And they're like, okay, cool, we can do that. You will probably be here for 8 years. You are full out of state tuition, no scholarship.
yeah.
So are you sure about this? And I was like, okay, back to the drawing board. And honestly, I powered through engineering with some friends who were in a similar boat, some fraternity brothers who also didn't necessarily love it, but still, saw a career for themselves in it.
Yeah.
And we just powered through. C's get degrees.
Love it. So I know Kanga started with your time at Clemson. Was that like an engineering project? Like what was that overall? Kind of Kanga. We'll get into beatbox and some other career stuff, but I'd like to jump into that project.
Totally. So my two now business partners, they were in the original class project, which was a business and entrepreneurship class.
Yeah.
And the assignment was how to find a solution to a problem that we face on a regular basis. Going to a big ACC tailgate school in the South, we were regularly running into this warm beer consumption on game days. And it was always so weird because we all have these $400 big bulky coolers that'll keep your beer cold for weeks, but none of us were using them on game day because it was inconvenient to lug those around from fraternity tailgate to family tailgate to friends to the stadium. So what we would end up doing is just going to the gas station, buying a 12-pack of beer and just kind of carrying it as is. We call it a naked case of beer now. And
Yeah.
within 30 minutes, the beers are sweating. Sometimes that handle breaks on you. You may drop a couple cans. Now you got to carry it like a baby. And so my partner Logan saw someone take a can out of one of those big bulky coolers and put it into a can insulator or a koozie and
Yeah.
realized, hey, that person, what they're trying to accomplish here is they just want to keep that single beer cold for the life that they're actually drinking it. So why doesn't something exist that could keep the entire 12-pack cold for the entire life that you're going to consume that 12-pack, or you and a couple buddies are going to consume a 12 or a 24-pack? And that's kind of where the idea for a koozie for a case of beer and iceless cooler came about.
Yeah, when that idea launched, was any vision around that to actually sell, or was it really just to kind of make this prototype for the class? And like, how did that play out from there?
I think the 3 or 4 other people in the class didn't really think that would become a real business, but Logan and Ryan had some confidence that it actually had some staying power, or was at least worth pursuing to see. A cool part that the professor requires as part of that class project is like, hey, launch it on Kickstarter and like give it a go type of deal, right? And actually create the documents to found the company and create the LLC, which that's a whole different story. That's not always the best idea to create an LLC with your classmates without actually, knowing if they're going to be the best business partners long term. But I think they had the intent, and I actually saw their Kickstarter promotional video about a month or two into the class project, and I was like, man, this is really interesting, and I'm really passionate about trying these new things and the beer space and the alcohol space because of beatbox. And so that's when I reached out, and that's when I got linked up with Logan and Ryan. Was about 2-3 months into it.
Love it. So kind of post graduation, I know you get into beatbox and you become in regional sales and management, but what does your involvement look like at Kanga? Like at the end of post college, post graduation, what does that look like at that time?
Yeah, we were moonlighting it like crazy. So Ryan and I both graduated from Clemson, and we went off and got kind of the big boy jobs. Mine wasn't the engineering thing that I would have been miserable doing. Fortunately, I got a job that I really enjoyed doing with great people and learning about entrepreneurship and networking. But we would work our 9 to 5s, and then we would work our 5 to midnights when we got back. And Logan went all in right from college graduation and moved into his parents' house. Worked out of the basement, which became his office and our first warehouse. And we tried to see each other as frequently as we could. We'd be working on the weekends and doing meetings at 9 p.m. We were young, and it was like you could do that, like your body could handle it. I have horror stories thinking back now. Like I don't know how we did those 16-hour days, slept and woke up and did it again. And though the goal was really just can we get Kanga responsibly to a point where it eventually could be something that we went full time on.
Yeah.
But it was still a class project realistically at that time. I mean, when I had graduated, we hadn't even done the Shark Tank hadn't gone live. We hadn't had the awareness yet that came from that. We really only had 1 or 2 revenue channels. And so it was a business, but it wasn't a business that could sustain 3 people's living expenses in a city, right? And so we just kind of pieced it together to bridge that gap, which was about, I would say, 8 to 9 months was working it like that.
Wow. So at this stage, what did production look like? Was it making case by case in his basement, or what did that overall look like at that time?
Fortunately, we had only ever had to do like a local manufacturing small run during the kind of class project and
Okay.
Kickstarter phases. And then we won a pitch smackdown competition that Clemson hosts, which is like a mini entrepreneurship, a mini Shark Tank run.
Mhm.
And we were introduced to some people there who
Awesome.
opened up some doors for us overseas to actually do proper manufacturing. And
Awesome.
so our first Kickstarter run was with a real manufacturer overseas, done
Mhm.
the right way. Took way longer than we expected. Took way longer than we communicated to our backers. But
Yeah.
that's kind of part of a Kickstarter journey is they understand. Hey, may not always get there exactly on time.
Yeah, for sure. And getting into kind of your Shark Tank appearance, I know you mentioned on the air how your beatbox opportunity happened. And you kind of have this foreshadow moment of you're a fan of Shark Tank and then you contacted Beatbox because of their airing. I'd love to kind of dive into that opportunity, your career at this time working with Beatbox and balancing. Like, how did that play out for you?
Yeah, totally. It's so funny because in my dorm as I'm hating my engineering decision in life, I'm watching this show which was just becoming popular. I think they were in season 3 or 4 at the time that I was exposed to it, and it's just all about entrepreneurship, right? These people go up and they started something from nothing, and it became something, and they get backing from a real investor who's using real money, or her using her real money, and so I was always just fascinated by that concept. And I was social chair of my fraternity at the time. Clemson banned hard liquor at fraternity parties.
Mm,
They allowed wine. And so, one of my biggest pet peeves ever as a pledge was cleaning up beer cans that had been cracked and had one sip out of them. And we
mm,
would call them like wounded soldiers on the ground. And so I started buying wine bags, like Franzia bags at the fraternity parties because I wanted to eliminate the people who didn't like beer but just grabbed a beer anyways and would crack it and put it on the ground, and it
yeah.
would be a mess the next morning. So these people would start drinking the wine, and they responded well to it. It wasn't like a mixed drink, but it was an alternative to, light, cheap college beer. And so when I saw Beatbox, I was like, interesting. This is like blue raspberry, pink lemonade, fruit punch flavored wine. Maybe there's a loophole here.
Yeah.
And so that was what sparked reaching out to them. Did the ambassador with them and an intern, and then the full time
Mm,
gig. And honestly, it's such a helpful way for me to transition from engineering to a startup. I've brought in brought so many lessons over from the Beatbox days. I mean, they're valued
totally.
at over $200 million right now. They have over 100 employees. I was
Mm,
employee number 3,
wow.
and was there for 2.5 years. Full time, less than a year after college. But like in the college, I was really active with them and helping them build it. And it wasn't a massive business at the time, and now it is. And now I have a better understanding of how a business can get from a million to those very large numbers. Hopefully
Yeah.
one day, a couple 100 million.
Yeah, totally. So at that time, like you mentioned, you probably transferred over a lot of knowledge from Beatbox over to the startup space with Kanga. Um, what did the interface look like for Kanga for selling? Was it solely D2C and was it on Shopify at that time? What did that look like?
Yeah, so early on, I mean, we each put $833 into this thing, and we don't have any major investments. So we had a bootstrap model. And so in order to cash flow the business early on, we discovered that the custom route, which is going to be taking a
Mm,
blank good and putting a company's logo on it, was going to be a great way for us to build up cash reserves early on. Because a company like a brewery, Anheuser-Busch, they were one of our largest initial customers. They would give us a 50% deposit. We
mm,
would take that deposit and go pay our manufacturer, do the run. That would cover the entire run. And
yeah,
then when we delivered the coolers, we would get the final payment from Anheuser-Busch, and that would be all, gross margin. And so
yeah,
that would be the money that we would then use to launch our D2C line
mm,
and buy some inventory so that we could hold it and put it on our website and then eventually launch it into retailers. And so our first year of business, our first 6 months of real in business calendar year, we did about 100 grand, and like
wow,
70K of it was custom and 30K
wow,
was, e-commerce and wholesale. And that's flipped now. I'd say custom makes up more like 20% ish of the business. And
mm,
e-commerce is the heavy hitter now.
yeah.
But early on, it's a helpful way to cash flow, especially, if there's someone who doesn't have just cash reserves or major investment or a lot of personal finances to dump in. I mean, we were also poor with so much student debt. It was like, how can we do this as least risky as possible?
Yeah. Yeah, that early on, what did the sales pipeline look like? Like, how do you land a partnership at that scale with Anheuser-Busch just being such an early stage startup? How
That
did
was
something like that
all
play out?
social media, which was crazy.
Really?
We got a DM from the buyer of,
Wow.
Anheuser-Busch coolers and drinkware and accessories. And she was like, this is such a cool idea. Have you guys ever thought about branding? And we were like, yeah, we love doing full custom stuff. Like, what brand were you thinking of? She was like, how about we do them all? Natural Light, Busch Light, Michelob Ultra, Budweiser. And it was like, okay, this is something
Wow.
here. And and we invested a lot of a time early on into social media, and TikTok was just becoming, what it ended up being now is one of the largest and best platforms for small businesses. And we caught some early virality on there, which helped boost other platforms. And
Yeah.
we had a lot of our initial lead gen come from organic. And
Wow.
eventually, when we had some more cash, we learned Facebook ads and Google
Mm.
ads and Instagram ads. And so we found a e-commerce paid media strategy that could scale and could be profitable. And then everything just started kind of growing in different, speeds, but all taking steps forward. Wholesale, full custom,
Mm.
embroidery, direct to consumer, and events are kind of our five
Yeah.
channels that we look at.
Incredible. I know within 6 months, that's kind of when the Shark Tank opportunity rolled around. You guys had some massive success just leading up to that. How did that play out, and what was that experience like for you guys?
Oh, obviously, like for me, it was so surreal just because I was on the couch, hating my engineering life and saw the episode and was all fired up and got a job out of, shooting my shot. But, it was really positive for us. And we have a lot of friends in the space who didn't have like quite the experience we did. We attribute a lot of the success to how prepared we were. So we obviously had that like pitch smackdown competition, which gave us a little bit of prep, but even further, we recruited a panel of 5 super successful Clemson and South Carolina entrepreneurs to
Mm.
basically roast us for an hour and a half straight while we recorded ourselves. And then we could go back and critique and make improvements. And so we created a little mini Shark Tank kind of trial run. And so that was scarier than the actual thing because
Yeah.
none of them were being funny or fun or joking or drinking a beer. And so when we got actually into the tank and filmed, it was more casual, conversational, and we felt prepared. Like we knew our questions, and it happened so fast. Like we have friends who were in there for an hour and a half
Mm.
filming. We were in for like 25 minutes, and
Wow.
all the sharks were interested. Mark offered, and we that was within our constraints, and we were excited to accept it. So it's been
Love it.
awesome.
I love it. Yeah, I've had a few guys who have been on Shark Tank previously on the show. Once that episode aired, what did the correlation look like for Spike for you guys?
Yeah, it's massive for a small business that's still kind of like on their first or second production run and Kickstarter campaign vibes. And so
Yeah.
uh, the PR wave was insane, and just the brand credibility. Like I always have so much confidence in our team and our product that we would get here to where we are today at
Yeah.
some point. But I think that Shark Tank sped us up a year, maybe 2 years. And
Yeah.
so I'm very grateful for how it all played out. I mean, they could have we said some dumb stuff, right? Like everyone does up there, and they didn't put any of that in there. They showed us in such a positive light, and they showed that inspiration story at the end, which I still have kids who DM me and say, hey man, like just saw your Shark Tank rerun, just wanted to say like it inspired me to pursue my business and that
Awesome.
idea that I've had tabled. And there's nothing better than hearing that. Like there's no amount
Yeah,
of money that feels better than getting a random cold DM like that. So
for
all
sure.
positives came from the Shark Tank experience.
For sure. Yeah, going into 2020, what did supply chain look like for you guys? Manufacturing overseas, how did that play out overall? And I mean, drinking. I'm not sure what consumption was like at that time, but for coolers, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, the first 3 months of COVID were so scary, right? Because there's
Yeah,
just massive uncertainty. Our manufacturers are shutting down. Our trade shows are getting canceled. Our retailers are having to close up shop. The custom picnics that we do for corporations and the custom coolers we do for golf tournaments, those are all canceled. And we're like, what in the heck are we going to do? And
Mm,
so we doubled down on content and social media and e-commerce, and our
mm,
e-commerce thrived in COVID, 2020, 2021,
yeah,
because we were able to change the brand perception, that it was only for large crowding tailgating events, but could be for going hiking. Our coolers could be for hopping out on the boat. It could just be for any time you want to just enjoy a couple cold ones and be outdoors. And that's what everyone was doing during that time. And so
yeah,
because of some small pivots there and some focus in another channel that had massive upside, we were able to survive. I'm not going to say it was like crazy thriving during those times. Like there were definitely
yeah.
some payroll sessions where my partners and I had to skip payroll for ourselves, and
Wow.
but that's part of it, because we knew that there, with the right strategy, we'd be able to work our way back into it. And then come 2021, we were back. We had a great year. Trade shows started coming back online. People were excited to
Mm,
talk to each other and be together, and retailers were back open. And I think we're pretty fortunate the way we weathered that storm without taking on too much of the government, loans and stuff that they were giving out. Like we were pretty responsible with all that stuff.
yeah, for sure. I know you mentioned it earlier, but if you can kind of talk through again the percentages that you see today, like between D2C, wholesale, how does that play out for Kanga today?
Yeah, totally. So we just finished 2023 with about 70% e-commerce. A
Okay.
bulk of that is coming from our Shopify site. And
Yeah.
then maybe 15 to 20% of it's coming from Amazon. And then of the remaining 30%, it's pretty even split, half wholesale and half custom.
Yeah.
Within the custom channel, we do that full dye sublimation, made to order overseas, 90 to 120-day lead time. 5-6 grand is the opening order. Then we have a domestic option where if someone just wants to embroider a logo on the flap of one of our existing designs and have like a 25-piece MOQ, maybe
Yep.
use it for a wedding gift or a golf tournament, and they need it in 3 weeks, we have that option now too. So that channel
Mm,
combined makes up about 15% of our revenue. And then wholesale is split between independent mom and pop surf shops and
mm.
boutiques and retailers. And Ace Hardware makes up a large chunk of our retail business. We're in over 3,000 Ace Hardwares right
Wow.
now across the country, and
Awesome.
they've been a great partner for us.
Incredible. So you mentioned 70% e-commerce, and I know you guys are built on Shopify, and something I'm dying to get into, something that recently happened, and you guys did a Shopify competition. Before we even mention like the opportunity that spiked from that, like how did this competition arise? What made you guys enter? What was it overall?
I just have to say, Cameron, you've done an amazing job with your research before this interview. So
Thank you so much. I've been following your work for probably 2 years now, so I've seen some of your journey. It's really inspiring.
oh, I appreciate that, man. But kudos,
Yeah,
kudos to you. I do a lot of these podcasts, and I don't always feel that people are asking as like intentional questions like you are. They're more broad, but yours have been phenomenal. So
appreciate it.
kudos. But yeah, that was crazy, man. Like we were just on LinkedIn over the summer, and they hosted this contest and said, "Hey, we pay Mr. Beast for advertisements in his YouTube videos, and we want to give away one of our ad spaces to one of our merchants. Like, comment what your business is, what your product is, and why you deserve it." And my comment was very simple: Kanga coolers. It's an iceless cooler for a case of beer. Think of it like a koozie, but for the entire case. And we just want to inspire young people to go for it and not feel stuck or lost, or I just told a little bit about that story about how we love when people hear our journey of bootstrapping it and they feel inspired by it. And we got a call in September. Hey, we've selected you guys.
Wow.
We need like 80 coolers. We're coming down in a U-Haul to pick them up over in the middle of the night because we have to film tomorrow. And I was like, oh man, they really do things last minute. So even a
Wow.
big business like Mr. Beast isn't completely prepping months in advance either. And and then he filmed in September, and then it went live in early December. And I think I
Wow.
checked it earlier this week, and it had just crossed over 150 million views, and it's one of his
Wow.
better recent performing videos. We have a 90-second ad right at the halfway point.
Yeah.
And so if I had to like really guess how many people make it that far, I'd say it's just got to be half or maybe a little over half. So at
Yeah.
least 75 million people have been exposed to Kanga coolers now. And if you think about Shark Tank, probably 5 to 7 million viewers live on ABC, maybe with all the PR and everything that comes from it, maybe
Yeah.
20 million, which I even think is a stretch. This was
Yeah.
75 million in the last 4 weeks. And so it's been
Yeah.
crazy. It's been amazing from a brand equity standpoint.
Yeah, let alone he has a powerful endorsement, but also I did see the video and just how organic it was. It flew in from like the grocery store and he like intertwined it with just like already drinks sitting on the shelf. It was so good. A good
Yeah.
endorsement.
He is very impressive the way he integrates his brand deals. They don't ever feel too salesy or too forced. And maybe that was some luck that we had, that we got selected as it was a grocery store concept. We need a cooler company to win this thing. I don't really care how they
Yeah.
decided it. I'm very fortunate that,
Yeah.
them and Shopify picked us.
Yeah. So if you can share what did the correlation to sales look like from that? And I know he shared on his story too. I'm not sure what other press picked up from that, but what did that look like?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. I mean, it wasn't like a Shark Tank like spike or a viral TikTok where you just see this like gigantic jump because the video is like watched over a course of time. But we
Yeah.
did feel an increase. We're still trying to quantify and it's so difficult to quantify these things because
Yeah.
there's so much going on. It went the Monday, it went live the Saturday after Cyber Monday, and so
Oh
we're
yeah.
already doing so much during this time. We're posting 4 to 5 times on TikTok every single day, and then the best videos are getting repurposed to every single other platform. We're doing some crazy ad spend during that time that's extremely effective, and our
Yeah.
site conversion rate is extremely effective because it's holiday shoppers. And then you add this to it, and it's been really difficult, but I think we're all kind of like comfortable saying around like a 20% increase during that time period we can
Yeah.
attribute to some initiative that came, whether it was directly from the video or from the Forbes article that supported it or the other PR that supported it.
Yeah.
It was all gravy for sure. So we're
Love it.
so fired up about it.
Love it. Well, such an amazing journey so far, but I like to conclude each episode with this. If you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would you say that would be?
Definitely. I mean, I've said it a couple times already on this podcast, but just like I think so many people feel like stuck in what they're doing, and especially college students. There's so much pressure that people feel, and imposter syndrome, and people just like looking to your neighbor, your friend, and stuff. And I think if you do something that you believe in and you really enjoy doing, you're gonna get out of it what you're hoping for and a lot more. Because there's just career paths out there, and I have friends who are just like, yeah, like I make my paycheck and I go home and I just don't really like what I do and I live for the weekend. And
Mm,
I'm like, dude, I lose track of what day of the week it is here because we're having so much fun. It's a
yeah.
high stress environment, but it is a high energy environment, and we're building something special with like really special people. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. As stressed out as I get, and I wear my Whoop bracelet now to tell me just how my stress levels are, and I'm going to the doctor, and they're like, it's part of it. Like,
Yeah.
you ride the highs and the lowest lows. And then my second message would just be to prioritize content creation. I really think that
Mm,
social media, we're still early with how impactful it can be for small businesses. I mean, we had a TikTok go viral in 2021 that brought more revenue and website visitors to our website than our
mm.
Shark Tank airing did, from a
Wow.
singular TikTok that only got like 1 million views. Like we've
Wow.
had Facebook Reels get 25 million views. So it's like
Yeah.
it's just content is fascinating to me, and especially entrepreneurs documenting their journey, because
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate that I have videos and photos from our 2019 warehouse where we had no heat, no AC. I'm bundled up in my jacket. It's miserable. The bathrooms don't work. I'm glad I have that content. It gives perspective of,
Yeah.
the place that we're in now.
For
So
sure.
it's
Love it.
fun, man.
Well, Austin, thank you so much for joining me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Kanga at kangacoolers.com.